Assalamu alaikum, you're listening to Unity FM on 93.5, the heart of the city. My name's Ibra Khan, and this is another In the Studio. So in the studio today, and we're very grateful for his presence. He's been a difficult man to track down. Isn't that right, Mr. Nasir Rafiq? Nasir Rafiq, of course, is a widely experienced fellow chartered accountant and an expert in financial governance advisory. He has an extensive experience of working with charities of all sizes. He also advises many small to medium-sized businesses and sole traders as well. Mr. Rafiq has a proven track record of developing and implementing successful organizational structures, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the interview. But with a I would say an acute focus within the charity and charity sector as well. Nasir acts as a senior advisor, CFO, and governance director to many large charity boards, including Islamic Relief Worldwide. And what he does is he kind of reforms the finance, human resource, ICT facilities and trading functions. He's also has a fairly well received blog. We'll talk a little bit about that, and is a regular contributor to television as well as radio station and here at Unity FM as well, of course, and we thank him for that, of course. After graduating in business and economics from the University of Leicester, he qualified as a chartered accountant. He spent over 8 years auditing and advising local and central government, NGO bodies and educational establishments, and he's also worked in the largest contract catering and facility management FTSE 100 business, Compass Group PLC, which is quite a mouthful. Welcome, Nasir Rafiq. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah for having me.
Barakallah fiqh. You're a toughie, man. To can you not sit down for 1 minute? Is it like you lead a very hectic life, mashallah?
Yes,
it seems hectic. No, hectic is the wrong word. Busy life, I should say.
Yeah. I've got my fingers in a lot of pies, and I think when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has blessed you with some exposures and opportunities, then I think the best concept of being thankful to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is that you use those skills, in benefiting, the people that need to be benefited with. So that's what my philosophy is, and this is what keeps me busy. Then,
alhamdulillah. I think it's a good way to be. Joking aside, Nasir Rafiq, this is we're not. It's a little bit of a different interview to maybe what you've done previously, so I'm not going to really hone in on and focus in on a particular topic as well. The topic really is you today and how you've got to where you've got to, and to talk about your transformation, your journey, where it all started, maybe talk a little bit about your philosophy, which you've kind of discussed. Talk a little bit about how maybe Islam is important to you and how it's incorporated in the work that you do, that sort of thing. So I want to strip it back completely, and I want to go back. I'm going to look at you and I'm saying I want to go back 40-ish years.
More than that.
50-ish years.
No, 47.
47. Okay, I want to go back 40-odd years, let's just say, and start right from the beginning. Are you a Birmingham lad? Where were you born and raised?
So basically, journey started in London. So I was nearly born in London. So I was about 3 months of age when I came to London. Missed out on British born for 3 months.
Okay.
So London, Forest Gate, Walthamstow.
So you were born where were you born then?
In Pakistan, Jhelum.
Okay.
And then came here. My father was already here. So it was East London where we were. So I was in London until my GCSEs.
Wow. Okay,
so just before GCSEs, and this is the time when Salman Rushdie incident happened. So a lot of our family members decided to leave UK and go back to Pakistan as a result. So my family was one of them. So my mum was quite keen that I grow up in Pakistan. So we went to Pakistan and it didn't work out. So parents came back with my siblings, left me there because I was studying. So I did my GCSE equivalent, and then I ended up in International Islamic University, Islamabad, where I was doing MSc Islamic Economics. It was during that time, my first year there, when my parents wanted me back in UK. So I then, and by that time my parents had settled in Walsall in the Midlands. So after 7-8 years in total in Pakistan, Jhelum and then Islamabad, and I came back to UK. So when I came back to UK, I then ended up in University of Leicester.
I'm going to stop you. Right there. There are so many questions I want to ask here. Firstly, why did your dad come over to the UK? Was he an economic migrant, economic opportunities?
Yeah, it was like anybody else. But the second time he came, and this is where the whole history of Pakistan. He basically had, when he came to Pakistan, UK, it was all about making money and going back.
Sure.
So when we decided to go back to Pakistan, he had made his money. We owned a factory and everything was fine. He went to Pakistan and
What kind of factory was it?
It was Lady Handbags factory in East London.
Okay, all right.
And he was doing well, and
Mashallah.
we had money, and he went back to Pakistan and he opened another factory in Pakistan, a brick factory.
Right.
And Pakistan, doing business in Pakistan is not like doing business in UK.
In what sense?
The health and safety, the rules and regulations, the fairness.
Would you say it's the Wild West?
It's worse than that, right? So he basically lost everything when he went to Pakistan.
Really?
He lost everything and he had to start from scratch.
How? How do you lose a business? How do you lose a factory? How do you lose premises, location? How does that happen?
So
was it the government? Was it the police? Was it family?
It's
friends?
everything. It's basically the local regulations, how the local competition, and because nothing is fair in Pakistan until you have influence and power and political power. So when you're from UK and you go to Pakistan, and this is what Imran Khan was about, to be honest, to create a situation where a normal man can compete. So in Pakistan, although our family is relatively well connected, but we've always been a family of principle, and we never kind of crossed the line when it comes to political affiliations and stuff. So Dad, we had some health and safety issues in the brick factory, and as a result, we did a lot of compensation, which normally people don't do. And then there were some weather pattern changes in Pakistan, and that weather influences the brick factory business because it's all out and open. So he lost a lot of money in that, and then some bad business decisions here and there. Anyway, he basically had to come back to UK.
So how old were you at this time?
So I was in my teenage years in Pakistan. So I was studying in Pakistan. So I was quite I was in my shalwar kameez all the time. Right? So
nothing wrong with that.
I mean, when I went to Pakistan, I could not speak a word of Urdu, and my dad put me in an Urdu medium school, and I couldn't speak Urdu. So I used to read English textbooks and then translate them into Urdu, because that's how I understood them. And it was a very steep learning curve. It's so much so that I basically, when I came to my college years, I started to write in newspapers, I started to do press conferences, I was quite active in student politics, and so much so that in my graduation I did it in economics and political science in Urdu. So I used to understand things in English and write them in Urdu. So my Urdu is supposed to be more advanced than my English as a result. So, Dad then came back to UK, left the family there, and then the family joined him. But because I was so much into studying...
So second time round, he went to Walsall?
Yeah, he went to Walsall.
But why did you choose London first time? Or was that because of the economic hub?
And everybody was in London at that time, the whole family.
Okay.
And once you're out of London for so many years, you can't go back to London. It's so expensive. So that's why he came to Walsall, being relatively cheaper to buy a house and everything. So he then settled in Walsall, and this is when I, came back to Walsall, and then...
So you then came back with him having
No, not with him. My family was there. I was alone with my granddad in Pakistan. And then, my parents kind of felt...
So how old are you now at this age when you've decided to make the...
So I was in my graduation when my parents came back. So I was at Islamic University Islamabad. I would be... in like 26 probably when I came back.
That's quite mature. That's quite old.
Yeah.
Dare I say it? Maybe even quite old. So in your mid-20s to have come back to a brand new setting, a setting that you kind of maybe vaguely remembered.
Yes.
But so what was that like?
So when I came back,
culture clash, or did you, like fish to water?
Well, University of Leicester. Before I joined the university, they already decided I'm going to be the vice president of the Islamic Society because of my experiences in Pakistan.
Okay.
So as I entered university, I entered politics straight away, and for me it was a walk in the park because Pakistan student politics is far more advanced than the politics here. So I started changing the Islamic Society in a really big way. A lot of colleagues that were with me at that time, they're in quite senior positions here and there, so they had a good political taste on how to do student politics. And I think it was the 3 years at university that allowed me to kind of come back to UK, hit the road running, as to speak.
So was that almost like a training ground?
It was excellent, because the thing is, I hardly studied when I was at university. I was so busy with student politics because Kosovo was a big thing at that time. Palestine, was always a big thing, and so politically there was a lot of things happening around the world, and universities, Islamic societies, I completely changed the way the Islamic society operated.
That's quite interesting, because whenever you watch television now, the geos, the ARYs, it looks very insular. It looks very like local and very inward looking. The politics, right? The politics, and therefore the news. But you're saying even way back then, not too way back then, but even way back then, it was more maybe outward looking. Whereas you look at it now, and it's always inner fighting between parties or parties fighting parties. It's very rare that you kind of see news that commentates on what's going on in the outside.
I think this is the issue with Pakistan.
Has that changed?
No, that hasn't changed. No. When you're in Pakistan, then it's all the whole world is just Pakistan, and you see, and it's infighting all the time. Pakistan has never had a stable time where there's a stable government, stable opposition. It's always been, and I remember this is one of the reasons why my parents called me back, because I was in student politics in Pakistan as well, and it was all protest all the time. So they wanted me to come back and study properly. So I then came back, and when you're at in UK politics, student politics, and this is where it's the good grounding of politics comes, because it's stable. The government supports you. I mean, the union used to give money to Islamic society to invite speakers, and I was quite active in student politics. I got elected in the student union. I not only got elected student union, I used to sit on the university senate as well, representing the social science faculty. So I had held some quite senior positions within the student union, and I was kind of like as a president of Islamic society, I was liaising with all other societies all the time. So that gave me good exposure.
Why did you choose Leicester, University of Leicester?
That's another story. So basically, I went to Islamic Foundation.
Right.
And I met Professor who knew me as a kid in Pakistan. And I came, look, I'm back here. What shall I do? And it was him who wanted me to study at Leicester University. Right. So he can keep an eye on me, and I can be involved in Islamic Foundation.
Mashallah.
So it was only because of that I chose Leicester University. There was no other reason.
And why economics?
Economics I studied, since like when I was in Pakistan. So since my kind of GCSE A-level years. So I studied economics in Urdu in Pakistan, and I graduated in economics in Urdu in Pakistan, and then I came back to UK. And I went to business economics at Leicester University. Economics is something that's always been my passion. So I had like two worlds of economics. So I had economics in a developing world, and I had economics in a developed world. And the contrast was just amazing. It's something that I did for a long time. So I graduated twice, once in UK in economics and once in Pakistan in economics. I was in the MSc Islamic Economics program in International Islamic University of Islam. Okay. I didn't complete that. I had to come back to UK. So I did about one semester there. Economics is a tool, right? It's a science, you can say. So if I explain, resources are scarce. Right, so they're not infinite. So how do you use those resources to maximize the benefit? Now, the benefit could be, money, but benefit could be something else as well. Now, when you're in a secular environment, it may be all about money, but in other, like environments, it doesn't have to be necessarily be about money. It could be about fairness, could be about justice. So that's what, I say economics is in that sense.
It's more of a tool, more of a vehicle as opposed to. Mm-hmm.
So, economics, there's economics lecture now, microeconomics and macroeconomics. So macroeconomics looks at the government level economics. Microeconomics looks at, like the industry level and the business level economics. So at that level, there may be, profit maximization and stuff like that. But when you're looking at macro level, like fiscal policy and monetary policy, I mean, there's no kind of like, necessarily money making in that, because, it's about how you run the government, how you build a nation and things like this. So, I mean, this is why I loved economics, because I've always been interested in politics. It had a political angle to it, it had a psychological angle to it, a business angle, as well as, a management angle to it. So that's why I kind of...
Well, when you were part of the Islamic groups at Student Union at Leicester, what was one of your most memorable situations or memorable moments? Was it a debate? Was it a particular speaker that you brought in? Was it an event?
The 3 years were I think the people who were with me at Leicester University would remember these were one of the most active years, where I took the Islamic Society into like a big strength, from a budget to like 600 to 6,000 pounds. That was quite a big money, a massive prayer room. I created different societies. I created Arab, Saudi, all sorts of societies, and I got them to make a group. And that group, then I became in charge of that group, and then we started going to politics, and we started winning, positions in the student union. I remember I was able to get a female, practicing hijabi sister elected as a women representative of the university. I got other brothers elected on other positions. I was in a senior position, so we were forced to reckon with in politics at Leicester University at that time. And I remember whenever there was a council meeting of the student union, and there was a controversial bill, they had to get Islamic Society on their side for that bill to pass through. So
you carried that weight.
So I carried that weight. So I kind of gave a taste on how to do student politics, beyond the normal, I think. And it was more about, Muslim issues and, international politics. And so it was quite a busy period. I mean, as I said, I hardly studied when I was at university.
Well, this seems to be following you around. You hardly studied in Pakistan. You hardly studied here. You, again, it goes back to that. I think you're a busy man. Like, you keep busy with other things. So when you left university, what made you? How does the accountancy come into it? Then did you do like an ACCA? Did you do a top-up kind of qualification to get into accountancy? And why accountancy?
I think this is a big message for anybody listening who's about to graduate. I did not know I wanted to do chartered accountancy until my final year, the end days of my final year. I always had an open mind, right? And the thing that really changed my life, and I would advise many graduates to do that, the better the university, the better the opportunity. I used to spend hours and hours in the careers office, in the university careers office, and I used to read a lot in the careers office. I used to attend mock interviews at the careers office, and it was that process that kind of really helped me to identify the strength in me and what is it that I really want to do. Because the problem is, what youngsters know these days is what they see around them. And they don't go out of their way to find out if there's anything else. So whatever their friends are doing, they basically just, choose that path. Sorry. And sometimes people lose opportunities because humans are different people. Everybody has different strengths. Being in the same environment, you'll have different interests and different strengths. So I had this whole background, Pakistan, UK, passionate about politics, passionate about economics, and passionate about change. And all these things, I then decided that I wanted to go become a chartered accountant in a big four chartered accountancy firm. So you can become a chartered accountant in a smaller firm.
Yes.
But for me, being in a big four chartered accountancy firm meant that I can, be part of a bigger change.
Right. Okay. Because I'm thinking, look, you were involved in politics, you were involved wanting change, social justice, this and that, and then you go into accountancy.
Yeah. That's exactly consistent.
It doesn't quite compute, but I guess that philosophy, the thread is change, and so in your head you join a big firm and you bring about that change. That's it.
Because in the big four firm, again, I chose to audit the public sector because I felt, again, my government experience, I was always interested in how government works. So by being an auditor in the private sector, not joining, the government itself, but being in the private sector, auditing the government sector for me was, I get the best of both worlds.
Right.
Being the auditor is something that, came like natural to me, because when you're somebody who's always, challenging, right, the status quo, right, or wants change and is not happy with the current situation, what you're doing, you're actually comparing something with something else. And this is what auditing is. So, but what happened with the Big Four, and it was when I joined Big Four, and I was quite.
For those of us who don't know much about accountancy, what do you mean by what does the Big Four mean?
So Big Four there are Big Four chartered accountancy firms in the world. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte & Touche. There used to be 5, but there were 4 when I joined. And these are the largest. When I say largest, even the top 5 is way smaller than the top, the fourth largest accountancy firm. So the Big Four is a world on its own. It's like comparing it like supermarkets. So you got the Big Four, supermarkets. I mean, there's nobody that kind of matches their size. So that's how these firms are. And again, the Big Four accountancy firms, when you're a chartered accountant or training there, you're not just, like, for example, these are so big that they do so many other things as well. Like, it's not just about adding up numbers. I mean, I used to audit, like Westminster Police was my client. I had a lot of councils. I had a lot of universities. And these are so big organizations that you can't check invoices all the time. So it was all about analytics. Right, okay, if this figure is 100 million, should it be 100 million or should it be more or less? It's the intelligence. This is why everybody around me, none of them had an accountancy background. I didn't have an accountancy background, economics. So people in my batch.
Critical thinking.
Is logical and critical thinking. So, people, English graduates, chemistry graduates, there was a GP, there were people from different variety of backgrounds.
Walks of life, yeah.
And I remember accountancy, they sent us on a 2-week, I would say, a commando training course up in Wales in a castle somewhere in December. And those 2 weeks, I would say, was probably equal to a graduation study of economics. And after 2 weeks, we knew all our debits and credits, and and that's what we had to know in order to complete our, start our journey in Big Four accountancy.
What made you want to go to? So who did you end up going with? Which one of the
So
Big
from
Four?
Leicester,
Yeah.
I got a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was the
PwC.
largest at that time in Cambridge.
Okay.
So just imagine, from Pakistan, Shalwar Kameez, then end up in Leicester University.
You keep on talking about that Shalwar Kameez. There's nothing wrong with it, Nasir Rafiq. Honestly,
people can't imagine me in Shalwar Kameez. This is why I basically. And when I was in Pakistan, people could not imagine me in trousers because I was always in Shalwar Kameez. So when I came to Leicester University, so it was Islamic society. So I wasn't, like, for example, I wasn't from a grammar school background. Everybody in my course was grammar school apart from me. And then I end up in Cambridge. So it's in Cambridge where competitive became competitive. So that's where my English then
really
improved.
Kicked in. Yeah, had to kick in. Otherwise they'd be like, who's this guy in the Shalwar Kameez?
So those 2.5 years in PwC, really, because this is I remember I used to come back to Walsall after a month, and I used to feel so strange with so many Asians around me, right? Because Cambridge was so white at that time. And for me, I'm auditing, government bodies in King's Lynn, where there's no Asian, around you, or even a black person for that matter. So for me, it was a proper introduction to the real.
What was that like, though? Did you feel, dare I say, did you feel at home? Was it an inferiority complex? Did you look at them and say, I'm going to learn from these people? Or did you feel something else? What was it like?
There's one thing
on a personal level.
There's one thing that's consistent in my whole life is faith. My commitment to faith. Look, I'm not amazingly, practicing, like, for example, Salah with all the nawafils, and everything. And, but my commitment to faith has always been very, very strong.
That's been your anchor.
And my anchor. So when I was in Cambridge, PwC, this is when 9/11 happened.
Right.
So you can imagine it was during that time. I was in Makkah on an Umrah trip when 9/11 actually happened. So imagine me coming back from Jeddah airport. That was an experience in itself. So So now I'm the only Asian in the office, or the Muslim, and in the whole Southeast at that time. So, and Muslim was a big topic at that time. But for me, I never was on the back foot, because I knew exactly what was right, what was wrong. I knew, kind of like, for me, there was no, apology. 9/11 was wrong. It's always been wrong for me. And so it was easy for me to kind of like engage in debates and present the view that I had. And it was a view that was basically, logical. So I remember once I was in King's Lynn, and there was no other hotel at that time. There was only a pub. And I had to stay in a pub to do the audit, because the audit was of a farm. We had to count potatoes. It was Walker's Crisps, I think, was their supply chain. And I had to stay in a pub. That was the only hotel in that village. And my senior was a female manager. And I remember we were in a pub having food, and I was talking to her about Quran. And
how was that conversation?
I even, when I went back to my room, I even completed my salah in a pub. Right? Not ideal. So, I mean, the thing is, I've never kind of compromised on my principles. Faith has always been there. And it was fascinating for me, because I was able to see the Muslim community through the eyes of the mainstream society when I was in Cambridge. And that was fascinating for me, changed the way I looked at things as well. Because sometimes when you're living in Birmingham and you're always with Muslims, your perspective and narrative,
it's a bit of a bubble. It can seem a bit of a bubble at times.
The world seems very different. But when you're out and when you look in, it's very different. And I think that really helped me to do some things that I did later then in my career.
So when you left, when you did your training at
So I didn't complete my training at PwC. So I then got married, and then I moved to Birmingham, and that's where I came back to Walsall for about a year or so.
So you got married and then moved to Birmingham. Why? So you were in Walsall, but why then Birmingham? Or did you just fancy a bigger fish?
No, so Walsall we lived in Walsall 1 year. It was a nightmare to commute at that time. And secondly, Walsall was too small town for me. I mean, my whole life, growing up in London, then, big cities in Pakistan, and then going to Leicester was tiny, but then Cambridge, and then Walsall. I mean, that's not for me. So I then my daughter was born, and then we decided to move to Birmingham a year later. So I've been in Birmingham since.
Okay, and so where did you complete your training then? So
KPMG.
Okay, so you left PwC and then went to KPMG.
Went to KPMG.
Why the move?
Right.
Just fancied a different.
Yeah. So when I moved from Cambridge into Birmingham, right, it was KPMG. I joined, and I was in KPMG for about good 4 years then.
And could you see the differences between the two organisations, or was it just a very smooth transition?
No, a smooth transition, because I joined the public sector in KPMG.
Right.
Now, in KPMG were big in the education sector at that time. So I joined the education sector, and without the education sector knowing, the public sector recruited me. Right, in terms of, I was a temp in the education sector, and I got a full-time job in the government public sector, and then there had to be a compromise between the two sectors. So I used to work across two departments then. So peak season I used to be in the education sector, and the other peak season I used to be in the local government sector, which included police, fire, and probation.
So after your training, was it ACCA, ACA, or CIMA?
It was ICAW.
Okay.
The proper one.
Oh, no, okay. Whoa, all right. You don't mean to offend accountants around this.
So basically, there are only 4 institutions where the members can call themselves chartered accountants. ACCAs can't call themselves chartered accountants. They are, chartered, what do you call it? What's the other word? Chartered associate accountants. So that's why they're ACCA. So only chartered accountants, there are only 3 institutions, not 4, 3 institutions. So ICAW, which is England and Wales, then there's the Scottish, and there's the Irish. So those people who qualify with these 3 can legally call themselves chartered accountants. That's, they're right. People with ACCA cannot call themselves, they have to put another C in between.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So once you got that, then what happens? What happened in your professional life? Did you stay on, or did you think, okay, now it's my time to move? Did you go into consultancy?
Yeah. So when I qualified, after qualifying, those were the peak days of Labour years, and the audits that we were doing were not just financial audits. These were, we were auditing councils on the use of resources, on the value for money issues, and we used to give opinions. So 50% of my work used to be that. And this is why the charity sector later became very easy for me to address. So, I came to a point where I felt that I was just repeating the work that I was doing every year. And this was a time when chartered accountants were well in demand within the market, newly qualified, because we had come out of recession and there were so many jobs out there. So I then decided to jump ship from practice and join a FTSE 100 business. And I remember I used to have so many interviews where I used to kind of like not go to the second interview. No, I don't like this organization. So I then chose...
So you were picking and choosing.
Yeah, so I chose this Compass Group. And the reason why I chose Compass Group, because it was a FTSE 100, monster, massive. I mean, they used to say that the top 10 employers in the world, number one, China Army, NHS, and then Compass used to be part of that.
Wow.
Top 10. And I chose because the director of internal audit at that time, I liked that director because he did not have internal audit background. He was a former finance director of the Cameo region. And for me, it's always about practicality. Theory is not something that, how things look in practice is something that, and for me, somebody who was a finance director of such a big region, strategic region, he's more practical. So when he became the internal audit director, that's when I joined the internal audit function, which was sitting below the group chief executive.
Right.
So the exposure and training I thought was amazing. So 10 of us were looking after about 50 countries. So the whole group. I had UK, Middle East, Southeast Asia, those are good. And I used to be the one, whenever things used to go wrong, I used to be sent in to look at those.
The troubleshooter.
Yeah,
the sheriff in the Wild West.
Remember, once I got a phone call that there's been a fraud in Thailand. The finance director done a runner. And, I'm like, okay, fine. I didn't even know where Thailand was. Right. So I'm preparing, and I got to ask my PA that, and she goes, it's going to be like a 14-hour flight. Whoa, where is this? And I said, I can't go, more than this. And I was there only for 3 days, 2 days in the plane. So it was a very different lifestyle.
Is that where your experience comes in? And so, because as part of your introduction, I said you've worked in Europe and Middle East and Southeast Asia as well. So is that with the Compass Group?
That's it. Exactly.
All over the world.
Exactly.
And what was that like? Did that kind of, again, I would say, without sort of blowing your trumpet, you were a bit of a man of the world by that time anyway, because you'd done various things, especially to do with politics in Pakistan and here, but actually traveling out to regions that you'd never been to, for example, the Thailand, did that kind of give you another perspective? Did that kind of broaden your horizons a little bit more? Did that kind of blow your mind?
I think looking back, faith has been consistent throughout my life, and the reason why I say that is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put me into different positions, but before he put me into those positions, he prepared me for those positions. So, in Pakistan, when I came to UK, went to University of Leicester, now the Islamic Society experience gave me all the skills that I needed to interact with, people outside my, comfort zone. And then I went to Cambridge, which was not my comfort zone, and that became my comfort zone. Now, with Cambridge, then I came back to UK, and then I'm auditing government institutions, sitting in, senior people, challenging them on the way they're going about doing their business. And from that, I then joined Compass Group. Now, when you're in a FTSE 100 environment, it's a very ruthless environment. In the government sector, when you find something that's not right, then what will happen is that, it's not easy to get rid of people. But in FTSE 100 businesses, it's basically, it's ruthless. You're making recommendations, and people, the way they respond to your recommendations. I mean, I remember I was in Thailand, and it was a fraud investigation. And I went for lunch, and they started removing all the, data while I was at my lunch. I came back, and I had to basically force myself in and get it all back into the room I was in. So, it kind of way had already prepared me for those positions where I can be assertive, I can be clear, and get the job. And I remember, when I, opened up a can of worms, and, like I went to Malaysia, I spent some time in Malaysia. When I came back, I did one of my most, damning reports at that time. And, people lost their jobs over it. And actually, a lot of my reports ended up with people losing their jobs in that. And I think I was the only one at that time. Everybody used to follow a template. I used to start from
scratch,
like a blank Word document, and used to do reports on, some unusual areas at that time. And this was a long time ago. And it was fascinating. I mean, and, the chief executive at that time, Chief Executive Richard Cousins, he was one of the most famous chief executives of the FTSE 100 era. If you, Google his name, he was killed in a plane crash in Australia, I think, like many years back. So, he was a well-celebrated chief executive. So I had the opportunity that my reports used, the executive summary used to be read by him at that time. So, in a way, that kind of like gave me, everything I did before had prepared me for that position, and I was able to excel in that. For me, it was, hitting the road running. I did not need any training.
So were you one of these people who would go into a boardroom and people were scared and they were like, what, this guy tells it as it is. He ruffles feathers. He's not here to please people. He's not here to, he is going to say it as it is. And as a result, did you begin to have a bit of a reputation?
I had this reputation with some of the senior. I remember I once looked at the procurement side of UK procurement side, which is about £3-4 billion procurement at that time, and the people who were leading that, they were former directors in Tesco's and Sainsbury's, and they were ruthless. And I remember on my first day, I got a phone call from that. Oh, they're going through your expenses. Right. And they found that you only travel, I don't know, it was Emirates or something, and that's not part of approved supplier. Right. Because I said, look, I'm going to only business class Emirates. I'm not going to travel in, I'm more comfortable with that. But then again, in the policies, there was an exception for internal auditors. So they're trying to place pressure on me. But at the end, I mean, again, the faith side, it always helped me that it's not about, it's not about work for me. It's about what's right and what's not right. And standing up for what's right and right, and being reasonable.
It's that justice thing.
Yeah, it's not like an ego trip where, it's my ego, you have to submit to me. It's what's right. And, I always used to come to a amicable solution, in the interest of the wider organization. And people used to respect that. But, obviously doing the work, I'm always courteous and everything. But when it comes to writing reports...
Where does that come from? The justice side. I know you mentioned your faith, but...
Yeah.
Is that also something that your mother or your father kind of placed in you as well, to kind of say from a young age, listen, do the right thing?
My granddad, without a shadow of doubt. My granddad, my dad's father, and my mum's father, both of them, they were men of principle. Everything that I do kind of reflects their life, because they were, like businessmen, and they were, politicians as well. Social justice was something really important for them. It was never about, like my grandfather was a millionaire, but none of his children became millionaires because of him, because he distributed his wealth to his family. For him, it was about uplifting the family, uplifting the community. He was somebody known for standing up for people. And some of his business decisions didn't make sense.
This is in Pakistan.
In Pakistan. Some of his business decisions didn't make sense. And today, when I, make some silly decisions in my business, I can remember he did that. He did the same thing, because because I remember once I was debating with my granddad, and my granddad gave example of my chacha, my dad's younger brother, who was like my guardian in Pakistan when I was in Pakistan. That he's a lead engineer of a grid station in Pakistan. Now, because of him, people get electricity in their homes. So his presence benefits mankind. This is how one needs to be. So all your study, anything that you do, needs to be such that as a result of you being in this world, people benefit. So organizations benefit. So that's the thing that he kind of instilled in me. And I'm the eldest grandson, and he used to really kind of look after me in that sense. And I think I always, I feel I get it from him, definitely.
Is he still with us?
He passed away.
Passed away.
A long time ago, yeah.
What would if you looked at the man that you are today, do you think, what would he say?
Actually, you'll be surprised. I did my Hajj in 2016. And I basically, one of the intentions of Hajj was to make dua for my granddad. He had already done Hajj, but he came in my dream just before the Hajj,
Wow.
in which he took me to a room and he sat me down and he said, right, tell me everything that you've done to date. And like we're doing now, I did that with him. And then he's listening. And when he was alive, he never used to do this. He was telling me off, right? And then he goes to me, right, okay, now's the time when you need to do something voluntary for the community, where you need to or everything that you've learned, you need to basically be part of a community organization. And he goes, your business is going to flourish anyway as a result of that, but this is the time now. So I think that's then inspired me to do other things that I'm doing now these days.
So is that when you left the FTSE 100 company, the Compass Group, and decided to set up your own shop? Is that right? Or?
Yeah, so I think it wasn't it was about 3-4 years into it when I did my Hajj. But again, why did I leave FTSE 100? During my travels, I was in Pakistan and I was in a research institute, IPS, Institute of Policy Studies, talking to the director there. And I told him I want to do something for the Ummah. And I've got all these skill set. What is it that I should do? Right? Because while in business class, life was luxurious, I still wasn't content because that's not me. I'm like, I've got all the resources I need, and this is people, dream of the things that I was doing. But I wasn't content with that. He came up with this idea that then basically made me leave Compass Group and set up my own shop and do what I'm doing today. He basically said that Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life has been researched and practiced in every role in this world, like as a father, military commander, politician, and community leader. But there's one role that hasn't been discussed much or practiced much. And he said that you can set up and that role is, if Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a chairman of a multinational company like Compass, and all the board members were Sahaba, how will that company operate in this world today? How would they interact with suppliers? How would it interact with society, government, employees? How would it run? Right. So he goes, you set up your own, advisory to give this to the Ummah, and I'll get people to write books. I'm not sure if he got people to write books, but I definitely went ahead with that idea. Okay. And then I decided to jump ship. I was doing really well at that time.
Did people look at you and say, what on earth are you doing here? Like, why are you making this decision?
This is exactly what my director said at Compass Group. He took me out on an exit interview and he basically blasted me right. Then he said that I envy you. These are his words. That what you're doing, you're combining your passion and your career in your job. And that's a very rare thing to have. Because I found another big accountancy firm that agreed to take me on with that business case.
Wow,
where I go to the Muslim charity sector. Islamic Relief was my first client with that firm. For 2-3 years, all the big charities started to come to me. I became either the auditor or advisor.
Yeah.
I got involved with the halal, like Tesco halal concessions. I got involved with that as well. So it's 2-3 years. I mean, that's when I started to basically put that in place. And after 3 years, I decided, look, this is all about me, not about this firm. So this is where Dua Governance then was born after about 3 years of that work with that accountancy firm.
What a journey!
Yeah.
What a journey! And so now, what you do is that a piece of advice that man gave you. That is what you do. You now go around, and to the best of your ability, of course, to try to change organizations, processes, and systems within these organizations to kind of so that those actions are almost filtered through an Islamic or as ethical a lens as possible. Is that correct?
Exactly. I mean, some of the things I do don't make business sense. And one of the reasons why I left that accountancy firm at that time was that some things I wanted to do, but it didn't make business sense for them. But I said, well, I want to be more free. If there's, like, for example, mosques, I sometimes do mosque accounts and I charge them, like a tiny money. Now, people with my experience, they are in senior positions in accountancy firms, in government and whatever. I'm the only one who's happy to do mosque accounts because, I feel happy doing that. So because it's part of my...
You're giving back.
Yeah, giving back, and not only giving back. I mean, it's in the day of judgment. As I said, as we started, I'm not very, I don't have many good deeds, in terms of, worshipping and all that. Maybe in the day of judgment, these little contributions I'm doing to the ummah, basically weigh heavy in my scales and I'm forgiven.
Inshallah. Do you miss the big days? Do you miss the big league? Do you miss the big four? Do you miss the corporate days?
There are days where I definitely do, and I kind of like kick myself. What am I doing? When I'm dealing with Muslim charities, it's not easy.
Why? Why?
Because the thing is, there's nobody out there who's had the same journey as me. Right. So I'm bringing the ocean to them, and they're like, scratching do I need this? Do I need this? And then the charity commission has been my biggest referrer. So they come in, and then I go into the charity. And I've been, talking about governance for 10 years, right? It's only the charity committee when they come and knock them on the head. They come, Brother Nasir, we need help now. So then I go in and, they basically start to improve things. So it's like a dawah, it's one of the hardest dawah that you can do, trying to basically convince organizations that you're not perfect, you're not the best, right? And it's hard work. And then again, from a money perspective, now if I wanted to make money, I wouldn't go into the charity sector. I would go into the business sector where I can make easy money. So that becomes challenging as well. So there are days where I'm down, but then again, it's the reason why I did this is because of faith, right? It's the faith that keeps me going on this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this commitment. He never lets you down, right? And I go down and then something else happens and I come back up again, and it's a journey that I'm on.
You describe yourself as not just a numbers man, but somebody who operational side.
Yeah, because of my experience, I'm not just a numbers man. So I deal with HR issues, I deal with facilities issues, I deal with IT issues, I deal with trading issues. So it's like it's a full rounded role that I have with organizations. There's, I've worked as one of the most senior directors at Islamically Worldwide, where I was responsible for global finances, HR, facilities, IT, procurement, and the trading operation as well. I think there's one thing that I've especially in that position and similar positions after that as well, is again going back to as an auditor experience, taking those difficult within Islamic belief. I used to be known as somebody who is always comfortable taking the most difficult decisions when it comes to HR matters, when it comes to even finance matters. I had the confidence to take those decisions, not because I'm a great man, and no, it's nothing to do with that. It's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I explained, has put me into positions where whenever a difficult decision came in front of me, I had a point of reference. Right, and I was able to confidently take those decisions bravely. At home, I can't even choose the tie I need to wear. And I have to refer to my wife, right? But at work, I'm that military general, right? That basically confidently can and doing Islamic belief, I was known for those decision makings. And the 3 years I was there, I was doing a role of 3 directors part time. I was running my own business. I was able to bring one of the biggest changes Islamic belief had, in terms of, the reserves from 5 million going to 11 million. I was able to pump money into, overheads, into the Islamic belief UK, the new headquarter. So, this is just example of Islamic. The reason why I'm mentioning Islamic belief is because they are a point of reference. In that, and all the things I did are quite well known, within the sector. And then after that, I joined, Nasir Rafiq as a CFO, and the issue was they couldn't make payments into Iraq, Syria. And when I left, they had a conveyor belt set up where we were able to make payments into that area. And again, that required not just coming up with a solution, that required a whole change within the local team. And Islamic belief, I had the directors and the CEO had a nickname for me called a bulldozer. Right? No matter what the history is, how thick the walls are, the bulldozer comes, just takes all out. That's bulldozer, not in a bad way, but in a way of creating a change.
Change, isn't it?
So this is where I feel I've kind of that's my kind of leadership style, I would say. And any organization I go to, I'm now working with some of the organizations. I won't mention the name, but you'll be surprised. I mean, it's only now they've started to use emails. And it's one of the largest organizations in the world on this. But because of my Pakistan experience, Urdu speaking experience, understanding that mindset, I'm able to communicate difficult issues with them in a manner that's consistent with the way they think. So on one hand, I'll be sitting with them. On the other hand, I might be sitting with a well-sophisticated organization. On the other hand, I'm sitting with the imam of a mosque, explaining to him about, issues related to his mosque. So I'm able to kind of cater a wide spectrum as a result of the work that I do.
Business has changed, and we know that social media is pretty big. Things like vlogging adds value, blogging adds value. You yourself, you've got a bit of a dare I even say it, notorious blog that goes out on a weekly or fortnightly or monthly basis. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as we discussed my experiences. So I've got a story to tell, and I look at organizations and I observe things. So I've got, like, for example, things to say. And then another thing is that I have this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with this ability to use analogy to explain some really difficult concepts. So what I started to do, I created this blog called duathoughts.com. And it's on my website. If you go on duagovernance.com, it's in there. And what I do, I give my thoughts on different aspects of organizations. So, I've even spoken about mediation. I was quite surprised. I met a mediation expert recently, and she thought I had qualifications in mediation because she read my blog and she could, find references. Now, what my blog did was just reflected my own experiences, professional experiences. So I write on leadership, I write on governance. I sometimes comment on charities when they are in public news. So I basically, tackle different. I use analogies. Sometimes I use gardening as an example to explain difficult concepts or how organizations improve themselves. So that blog basically reflects my journey that we spoke about, and this is why I felt. Sometimes I'm sitting and I don't write it regularly, as in weekly or monthly. I might be having a car wash and I'm sitting waiting for my car, and the idea comes in my head, and I just put it down on my OneNote, and then I publish it as a blog later. So it's literally my thoughts that are developed through the professional experiences I have.
And do you think a tool like that, like a vlog or a blog, for that matter, adds value? Like, what does it give to people outside there looking in? Does it kind of reassure them? Do they think, okay, well, this person's on the precipice of, or on the cutting edge of whatever's going on at this moment in time? They're very much current, as it were.
Yeah. So I think there's one thing that I always, controversial topics that people don't talk about. And because sometimes what happens when you're within the Muslim charity sector, there's this tendency of not talking about the issues in the sector. There's either unfair criticism out there, there's a lot of hate out there, or there's a lot of praise out there. Sometimes there's a lot of noise, and what I try to do, I take difficult topics and I use analogies, and I'm talking to people who actually run charities and businesses. These people are, they haven't got PhDs or may not be educated.
So you're like a critical friend.
Yeah, critical friend. Yeah. So I then give a perspective on things, try to basically, have them snap out or sometimes the mold they're in, so that they can see the wood from the trees, and that's the thing. And I give them like snippets on, because there's another thing that I've noticed, and again, my experience was in big four accountancy firms where I'm looking at good practice all the time, and I'm comparing good practice. When you come to the Muslim sector, you find the same people, going into, it's the turnover is same people, same faces, different charities.
Bit of a merry-go-round.
So whatever they've learned in one charity, which is bad practice, they go and copy paste that in another charity, and they only know what they know from the experiences, or they read a book on Amazon, or attended a workshop or something.
So it's more ignorance or limited knowledge as opposed to them wanting to
That's it. So,
You know,
so
your
what I do,
practice.
I'm not in this vicious circle because I'm not from the Muslim sector. I'm from a sector that's a well-developed, good governance sector. I know how good governance looks like because I've experienced it, I've touched it. So when I talk about this in my blogs, I basically reflect that experience. This is how good looks like. And this is how we achieve that good as well. What are the things that we need to doing? So the whole idea of the blog is that in the noises that we're in, I basically, point out the voices that need to be heard. I mean, I recently met somebody, a senior partner in a big chartered accountancy firm that specializes in the charity sector, and she waits for my blog sometimes, and she goes, look, these are the discussions that finance directors and chief executives and trustee boards need to be having, and you talk about them in your blog. Because if you look at Charity Commission guidance, it's all boring, and sometimes guidance is boring and it's off-putting. What I do, I put a spin on things. I use daily and tools and experiences and analogies to explain the point. Like leadership, I'll use an analogy to explain leadership or difficult topics where things wouldn't go bad. I think I did one blog on I think it was COVID, that advisor of Boris Johnson when he resigned, and the topic was when things go pear-shaped. Right, and I used the COVID example, the government examples, and I basically, use that example to explain when things go wrong in charities. What are the similarities? So that I made references to real life examples,
so people can relate to it.
That's it. So that's what my blog is focused on.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So let me ask you about something else. There was an individual in front of you wanting that career advice. Would you recommend that? Would you say to them, listen, go out there, don't necessarily be that person who's just focused on one thing, but try and be go back to Imran Khan, try and be a bit of an all-rounder, a people's person, try to get your hands in as many pies to kind of give you that experience, and so when you do come across difficult situations in life, you can kind of make reference.
I think there's one thing that I would advise everybody listening is that be thankful that you're in UK. I lived in Pakistan, and if I was in Pakistan, there was no way I would have had the exposures that I had. I didn't have any, there's in Urdu you say safarish, right? In Pakistan, you need, somebody to put a good word in, but in UK, you don't have that. So, despite not having that, I was able to achieve what I've achieved. So be thankful that you're here. What that basically means is, being thankful doesn't mean that, right, okay, just have your chin up and make sure everybody, has a go at you. What that basically means is that this is a land of opportunity. If I can do it, you can do it as well. And it's not just lawyer, accountant, and there's a million things out there. My daughter's decided to become a psychologist, and she wants to do psychology, nothing to do with economics. So find your own strengths, and there are so many things you can do. You don't have to be a graduate to be successful. So the thing is, one of the things that a lot of people fail on at graduate level is they don't do proper research of themselves and what's out there. They basically, half-heartedly send application forms, and when they get rejected, they basically get demoralized. I was so happy I got a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers at that time. That was my first graduate job. Not because I got a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, it's because I wanted to fill any application forms in again. Because for me, filling an application form, I should take that process as seriously as sitting an exam at university. The amount of research I used to do, the amount of people I used to interview, just to make sure that's reflected on the application form. And I should take that process seriously. And I remember in PwC, in a Christmas party, when everybody was getting drunk apart from me, my recruiting manager was asked that, how did you recruit him? And I was like, right, okay, what a question. And I remember what she said. She was, half drunk, right? And she said, the reason why we recruited him, he was in Cambridge and there were one vacancy and 10 applicants. He was the only one not from Cambridge University. And the reason why we interviewed, he was successful. He had the next 10 years worked out.
MashaAllah.
And whereas everybody else, because my friend and this and that, but he had really done his research, and that came across. And I think, sometimes I feel that like the starting position of our youngsters is always a position of negativity. I remember when I was in my local mosque and I said, I'm going to apply for PwC. Everybody should laugh at me, or you're going to go there, they're going to look at your bed and they're going to kick you out, right? And you're going to say competitive, right?
in your Salar community.
Yeah. So when I got my job, they go, oh, he's a sold out, right? Stop talking to me. But the thing is, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I didn't even have any grammar school, A-level, background. So if I can do it, anybody can. And I think when you graduate, my recommendation would be is two things. First thing is keep your learning as general as possible at that stage. And be willing to do the most mundane stuff that's out there, because I remember in KPMG once I came in, I was busy. I said, "Oh, I want some help," and they go, "Oh, there's this girl sitting there, and it's her first day." So I went up to her. I've got a box in front of her. Oh, can you start photocopying? I didn't even ask her name. I was so busy at that time. Lunchtime, I sat with her, and she was a black girl, and it's very rare, in those days, because ethnic minorities now you see, big four firms with huge representations there. And so I might as well have my sandwich while I'm sitting with her. So I asked her, "What's your name?" And I'm from Gambia, right? Or where did you graduate from? Harvard University. Harvard University. What are you doing in Birmingham? She goes, "Oh, she's moved to. You want to come to UK?" And she got a job in KPMG. And I'm like embarrassed out all day. And she's just been doing photocopying. I said to her, "Look, it doesn't matter if you're from Harvard or from wherever. The first day is going to be photocopying, but then there'll be a steep learning curve." So the thing is that sometimes youngsters, they basically want the high flying from day one. No. You have to start from the bottom.
Earn your stripes.
Because tomorrow, you might need to manage people who are doing this. Unless you've done it yourself, you won't be able to manage people like that. And again, the first 10 years of your graduation is a year where you be prepared to be whipped. Be prepared to be whipped. The grit, the hard work. I mean,
resilience.
And I remember one day, I was traveling some college order, and the manager came to review, and he came into the room and looked at me and goes, "Oh my God, are you dying?" Right? I had to sleep for days, right? He sent me home. He goes, No, you just sleep for a day and then come back, because it was hard work. It wasn't easy work, but because of that hard training I did, 7-8 years, even Compass, the traveling, although it was business class, but still it was hard. I was able to be that confident man taking those difficult decisions. So, you have to, pay the price in order to win later in your life and be able to contribute. And, I gave the example, I was in a pub, in Kings Lynn somewhere, right, in the alcohol environment. Well, I had to do that to do what I'm doing today, where I don't attend any alcohol events. I choose my own destiny. But I had to go through that in order to develop my skills. Sometimes our understanding of Islam is such that we kind of put ourselves in a bubble and don't expose ourselves to the real world. And as a result, we lose out in skills and in capability that the ummah, really deserves to have in our later years.
Let me ask you, you mentioned your daughter, and she's wanting to get into psychology. Now, as a man who's got an economics background and accountancy, and when she told you she wanted to do psychology, were you absolutely happy with it? Or were you like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Or what was your kind of advice and guidance to her?
Well, the thing is that in my mind, I always, you can graduate in whatever you like, and then you can do, because as I said, I went into chartered accountancy. You don't need an accountancy degree to do that. So for her, psychology, I'm not sure, economics, because she's exactly like me. Oh, you love politics, you love this and economics. This is why I did economics. She chose A-level economics, and she's hating it. Right? So I was forced to...
In this case, the apple fell quite far from the tree.
So I attended so many open days at university with her, and forced to sit in psychology lectures, introductory lectures. And I'm well impressed. I should have done psychology. It's such an amazing subject. And again, my view is that it doesn't matter what you do at graduation. Psychology is something that you can do anything after that. I've had exposure in HR while I was at Islamic Relief. Psychology fits into that role. Even in business psychology, even auditing psychology. I mean, there's, there's so much variety in that. So I was quite. The first thing is, she's the one who needs to decide what she needs to do.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'm impressed by the subject psychology itself by attending these open days. That the career opportunities are amazing. Again, you can graduate in whatever you like, as long as you got a 2-1, and you're ambitious and you got all those extracurricular skills. You'll get somewhere.
Can I ask you a bit about your parents?
Yeah.
Are they still with us? And what do they make of this bulldozer that is Nasir Rafiq has become?
So you reflect the way my parents alhamdulillah are alive and well. They live in Walsall. So my mum is where the faith side comes in from a very young age. She ensured that I read, and I had the right surroundings around me. And for me, the thing about with my mum and my parents, but especially my mum, money is never a measure of success for her. It's how I'm perceived through the outside world, what my morality is, what my ikhlaq is, and what my contribution to the community. This is what my mum's measure of me has always been consistently throughout my life, even now. She's not impressed with radio interviews or anything like this if it's not contributing to something.
And your dad?
And my dad is like that as well. My dad will follow my mum on
Okay.
that, and my dad's whole life is like that, where he's been quite politically active, and like mosque, and always vocal on these issues. But there's one thing about my dad that really shaped my life, is that he's somebody who's never imposed on me on anything. Going back to my earliest memory, it's always been about, right, okay, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. It's your choice.
Make a choice, yeah.
Right. So he used to always let me make those decisions. And sometimes when I'm making those difficult decisions, I sometimes feel, wait a minute, I was given that opportunity to make those decisions myself. Now, sometimes my daughter, I feel that we're too kind of like, controlling of her. She should be allowed to make mistakes. And then there's one thing that my dad did. First, allowed me to make those decisions, but gave me that support 100%, even if I, made the wrong decision. Always, kind of was biasly supporting me on whatever I did, because of my mum, he had that confidence that I would never make the wrong decision. So I think that's where my parents, I would say, would come in.
Alhamdulillah. And my last question: what's next for Nasir Rafiq? I mean, what are we looking at? Politics, more charity, other business endeavours, travelling?
So
eating at the food festival. What are you looking to do?
Food is always
high on the agenda.
High on the agenda, definitely. Yeah, I think with me, I'm at a stage where there are different, like that granddad's dream. I'm still kind of grappling with me. What is it that I need to be doing? So there are different things I'm trying out. I'm the chairman of Abrahamic Foundation. Even with that, I was going through this thought process, in terms of how effective can I be. Then there are other areas within the counter-terrorism that I've recently been exposed to. So is this something that I should be, helping the community with? And then, general wider, the mosques in Birmingham. So, alhamdulillah, because of the work I do, I work with all, sects and organizations, and I have that level of trust. Is that something that I should be, more focused on? So there are different projects out there, and I think it's a time where I probably need to decide, okay, which is it I need to do properly and take forward. So for me, that the community side contribution is important, because that comes from the granddad's dream. And then from a business side, I've got a product that works. I need to scale it up, and maybe this needs to be my legacy. Because if I am able to set up a PricewaterhouseCoopers, a KPMG for the Muslim world, what better than that? Because that's then the machine that's strengthening the sector, no matter what background you're from. So there are different kind of like parts out there, and let's see where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes me, like how He always has taken me from one place to another.
Alhamdulillah. Nasir Rafiq, I'm going to leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure and an eye-opening interview. I didn't realize you'd done so many things for so long, and but the common thread seems to be governance, alhamdulillah, for now. So again, I know you're a busy bloke, but jazakallah khair for taking time out and for giving our listeners some really insightful nuggets, hopefully, that people can take away, mull over, and hopefully use and implement in their life. So jazakallah khair, thank you very much indeed.
Jazakallah.
Wa alaikum assalam.